Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 563rd episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution. When we visit our local grocery stores, the rows and rows of produce on display may seem like an abundance in varieties. But did you know that over the last 2 decades, 75% of genetic diversity of agricultural crops has been lost? Take a moment to imagine if your favorite seeds disappeared from catalogs tomorrow. Wouldn't you like to have a backup plan? From the local seed varieties going extinct every year to GMOs and seed patenting, we're experiencing more insecurity in our world's seeds than ever before. That's why small farmers and hobby gardeners from around the world are joining together to preserve seed diversity, not only to grow robust, high-yield crops in their own gardens, but also for the sake of the greater world. I invite you to join me for the Global Seed Summit this November 17th to the 20th for an online free event that will gather thousands of food growers from around the world to discuss the importance of seeds and how you can become part of the seed movement. Over 4 days, you'll learn how seed libraries strengthen food sovereignty and why you'll want to join or maybe even create one in your own community. You'll also learn about seed adaptation for extreme clients, plus you'll be amazed by inspired seed initiatives from around the world. This event is free to join, and I'll even offer opportunities for you to stock up on bulk seeds to start your own seed journey. So, are you ready to live your most food secure life? Sign up for the Global Seed Summit at globalseedsummit.com. I look forward to seeing you there. Welcome everybody. Greg Peterson coming to you from the Urban Farm in the heart of Phoenix, Arizona. And I am here with Bill McDorman. Welcome, Bill.
Hello, everybody.
Man, these months fly by. Can you believe it's been a month already?
No.
Right.
You know, it's all the same. I think that's part of the COVID curse, right? All the days start to look the same. The weeks just melt into weeks and months into months. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is the case. Bell did some really good writing about what we're talking about tonight. You're going to join Bill and I. And yes, seeds can be exciting with Bill and Greg, and we'll tell you why. We got that one covered, Bill? The magic, the resilience, and the adaptation all make for an amazing adventure as we strive to improve our seeds where we are and develop more delicious food. This Tuesday night, Bill and I will clue you in to a unique opportunity to find starter seeds through a program called Seed Up in a Box. There you go. Let's start, Bill, just very basic. What goes into the cost of a packet of seeds?
Well, let's a little context for that. I was in the seed business for, I owned my own company for 28 years and had something to do with buying and selling seeds for about 40 years. And when I say that, this is not industrial scale. I didn't work for one of the big, huge companies ever. My goal and the whole thing was making sure everyone had enough diversity in each region. That's what I dedicated my adventure to. And so I was always working on a smaller scale. But small scale is where you can start to talk about how most people get their seeds, because most of us get it in a really small packet. I think I was trying to look up today how many millions of packets of seeds are purchased each year in the United States, but it is millions. I mean, I met the people at Lilly Miller Seed Company. It's a chemical company, and they had a seed line, and they used to package 5 million packets a year. And that was just one small company for the Northwest that nobody's ever heard of.
Wow.
And there's
5 million packets.
Yeah. I read in Seed World once where they built a new 4 million square foot facility in the Midwest to package seeds for 200 different companies. And what they would do is bring semi-truck loads full of seeds in one side and then semi-truck loads full of packeted seed going out the other side. And they were all the same seeds, and they were going to 200 different companies to 200 different, parts of the country. Mm-hmm. And that number of companies has come down even because most of the packet seeds are sold in big boxes now or chain nurseries. And so they, it's better for them if they only buy from one company to do all of those things. And so as we used to say, you can walk into the Home Depot in Florida and buy the very same packet of seeds that's in the Home Depot in Montana or is in Phoenix, even though they're three totally different, climates. And so by the time seeds get into a packet and get on a shelf and are priced for most gardeners to buy them, about 90% or more of the cost is in the packaging and in that system to get them to you. In other words, there's never more than 3 or 4 cents normally. I mean, it can be a little bit more depending on loss leaders and things that people like, but, worth of seeds in a packet. And yet we spend $1, $2, $3, $4 for a packet of seeds. And so that's just the reality of how the system works. The farmers are contracted to grow them for huge, big operations that then wholesale them to mid-size wholesalers. And those mid-size wholesalers then sell them to packers. Some of the mid-size wholesalers are packers themselves. Sometimes they just sell them to packers. Packers are the companies that you may have heard of. They're the companies like, the old school companies like Burpees, or I'm trying to think of some of the others, or some of the new modern companies, even like Johnny Selected Seeds and High Mowing and Territorial. And so the big myth for most gardeners, and they wake up to this at various stages in their gardening careers, is they realize that when they buy their packet of seeds, the people that sold it to them have no real relationship to them either, usually. Like Lily Miller never did grow any of the seeds of those 5 million packets that they were selling. In fact, a friend of mine who worked for them one time took a bowl of tomatoes into their board meeting and put it on the table, and one of the board members of Lily Miller, this chemical company, said, "Well, that's really nice. What are these here for?" And he looked up and he said, "These are your tomatoes. There's one each of the kinds of tomatoes that Lily Miller is famous for selling in their packets." And none of the people involved had ever seen or heard the names of those seeds. And that's an extreme example, but that's not an unusual example in the seed industry. And so we're all getting seeds that are run through these huge, roboticized systems now. Most American gardeners are that there's 3 cents worth of seeds in, 3 or 4 or 5 cents of seeds worth in them,
or less. The last packet of basil that I bought contained about 20 seeds. I think it was $2.99, and I think our scoop of basil seeds for the Great American Seed Up, which we're going to tell you about in a little while, is 4 grams. And I think what I read recently was that there are 600 seeds in a gram.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And our packets at the Great American Seed Up and Seed Up in a Box are running about 75 cents.
Right.
These jumbo packets.
Yes. Well, so Greg, you and I are into permaculture and local. We don't believe that these long global supply lines are a good thing to depend on. I mean, it's nice to get diversity wherever we can get it. I'm a big fan of get your seeds wherever you can, and whatever lights you up, get them and trade them. That's all real fine and good. But what happens if we don't have access to all of those things? I mean, starting in the 70s and then the 80s, especially in the 90s and the 2000s in the U.S., the seed, the part of the seed industry that I was a part of started to grow and change things. And so, companies like Johnny Selected Seeds became famous because they would actually grow out and trial everything that they would sell. I mean, that was, in the modern era, that was pretty rare. And they were kind of in a unique cold climate, short season things. And that's how I grew up in Idaho. So I was really drawn to that kind of stuff. And they were really great. But Johnny's never has grown more than at some point, somebody told me 11% of their own seeds. And now it's way less.
Right.
And in fact, somebody told me the other day that 75% of their seeds are now contract grown in China, as many of the other companies have gone. 75%. That's unverified, but that's the first time I've heard a number. They're a $60 million company.
Mm-hmm.
They were, when Rob Johnson was ready to retire, they had offers from Harris Moran. That was one of the names of the other companies I was thinking about, a large wholesale packer that sells seeds to other people that pack, as well as their own lines throughout history. And so, yeah, that's big, and Tom Stearns is a good friend. Rob Johnson is a good friend of mine. Tom Stearns at High Mowing, they're a great company, and they've done a lot for certified organic seed. But when I say 75% of their seeds are being grown, I mean, I'm talking about the certified organic ones also. There's nothing like local and resilient to our continent about their distinctions anymore. And so that leads to the problem. Where are we going to get our seeds as we look at the future? And I think that's what you and I, we can tell the story of the Great American Seed Up so we're living in and around Phoenix, Arizona. There's 4 million people there now. I mean, 6 or 8 years ago, there were 3 million. So now we're at 4.8, growing fast, and no seeds being produced, little or no seed being produced for that area, in that area. So we're starting from scratch. I mean, it means a couple of things. One is that there's no research being done on varieties that will grow in that climate anymore. No local adaptation happening. The big companies that own the world seeds now are targeting areas where they can grow the most seed and the most crops, not where people are ending up living like Phoenix that are getting hotter and hotter and drier every year. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we had people growing and saving seeds in that hot, dry climate and adapting those seeds to those changes? I mean, that's what we need. And so you and I, Greg, we thought about, so what we really need to do, it's just a real simple math problem. How do we get massive amounts of seeds into that area and teach as many people as we can to grow and save their own seeds so that we can catch up and start to do this work again? And if you're going to bring in massive amounts of seeds, where do you find them? What varieties do you bring in? And so we've been hacking through that problem and working on this for 7 events now over 6 years
Yeah, it goes
to
back
try to do that. And,
Yep.
yeah. And we call it the Great American Seed Up.
I actually want to tell a little bit more backstory. So I went to seed school in Tucson in 2011. It was over summer solstice. I remember I was there on June 21st. And you and I started having a conversation about what would it take to do a seed bank in Phoenix. And we decided that, 1,500 pounds of open pollinated seeds, like 60 different varieties in a freezer would do it, kind of. And then you may have been sitting back laughing at me, but I did it anyways. And then we had a seed bank. But the problem is that one little seed bank in the middle of Phoenix in a freezer does not constitute enough seeds for Phoenix.
Right.
And so
I was really happy actually you had some.
Yeah.
Because every little bit helps for sure.
Right. So fast forward to 2013, and you and me and Belle are having a conversation, and we were on a trip somewhere, and we about 15 minutes. I remember we were on our way home, and you and I and Belle had a conversation for about 15 minutes and created the Great American Seed Up. And that was over Thanksgiving, and we launched our first one in April. And so the Great American Seed Up, basically what it is this great big seed bazaar with, we use a 10,000 square foot room with, last year we had over 100 varieties of open pollinated seeds in it. And each variety has a popcorn bucket and a scoop next to it and a business card and a Ziploc bag so that people have their check sheet when they walk around the room. And they walk up to Armenian cucumbers, and Armenian cucumbers, it's say a tablespoon. They put a tablespoon of Armenian cucumbers in the Ziploc bag. They grab one of the business cards. The business cards has all of the information about that variety on the card so that it's basically the label. And you put that in, zip it up, mark on your checkoff sheet that I got 1 scoop of Armenian cucumbers. Oh, by the way, was probably $1.25 for that scoop. And how did you really did it. How did you go about designing the size of the scoops, Bill?
Well, 40 years in the seed business.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what people would expect in a packet of seeds. There's a range, but most companies have fallen into patterns for how much you put of cucumbers, or it's usually about 1 gram
mm-hmm.
in most cucumber packs, that sort of thing. And so I knew those amounts, and I've been using them and dealing with them. And then so for the seed up, what we did was at least double that amount, and in many cases do 4x what people would normally get in a packet of seeds. We just at least double. And so this system was set up to solve a couple of problems. One is that let's just get farm direct seeds. I knew who was growing them, and I knew the consolidators that were contracting them to grow them, where the whole, shebang starts, especially for open pollinated seeds, especially for those land raised varieties that would be the best ones available for us to start with. And so we just buy them directly, bring them into a hall, dump them into buckets, and make sure people got twice as much what they expected. And then we set prices based on, in many cases, a half or a third of what people would normally pay, because we're getting them farm direct. we don't have to pay 90% of the cost in all those middle people and in all the packaging, right? Because people are packaging them themselves. That was the brilliance in this whole idea, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say they package them like mad. I mean, last year we had over 800 people come through the room.
2 tons of seeds, right?
Probably closer to a ton, but still, that's 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, 2,000 pounds of seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so March happens, and then April happens, and we start having our meetings for the Great American Seed Up in February every year, just to kind of get a head start on it. And we, in March and April and May, we were looking at, is there any way that we're going to be able to put 800 people in a room in September? So we jumped off and said, yeah, we can't do that. But what we did is we created Seed Up in a box. And basically the concept behind it is that we package the seeds inexpensively enough so that you can do your own seed up. Bill?
Yeah, that's it. That's the idea. Well, we never started out to be a seed company.
Right.
We could have done what everybody does and started a Southwest Seed Company, but I've just done that for 40 years. And there's a lot of advantages to it, but there's a lot of disadvantages to it. Granted, that's the only way most Americans know how to get their seeds is to buy a packet of seeds, either mail order or go down to the store, In fact, most people think that's where seeds come from.
Right.
Somehow they magically come out of the end of that 4 million square foot roboticized facility, right? It's like everything else. And so we didn't want to do that. And so, the Seed Up is just the answer. It's what Costco does. It's what these pop-up, bazaars do that sell tennis shoes in the cities. We're learning how to get goods to people without all the middle stuff. And so people can get more of what they want and get it cheaper. And then the other part of that is that our goal was never to make a lot of money on this and to start a business. It was to get Phoenix to have enough seeds that are grown here and adapted here. That's our long-term game. And so that's why with every Seed Up, essential was the education. We just give classes all day long on how to do this, how to start your seeds, how to save them, how to store them, so that people could come into this thing, get all their seeds for a record price, more than they could use for the rest of their lives, to quote Greg Peterson, and then learn how to do it, feel confident walking out the door that, wow, I may never have to come back. That's a successful customer for us. It's not that we want to be there every year to give you your seeds. We want you to come, get enough, learn enough, and help us solve this larger problem. That's what we were trying to do. And so, we can't do that. We can't get 800 people in there in 2 days. We can't afford to rent the space over a long period of time to distance it long enough. So we decided to set up a system so that everybody out there that wanted to could do their own Seed Up. You guys figure out the distancing and how to interface with your pod or your community and keep it safe, And in smaller groups, that'll be easier than it would have been for us with 800 people. In fact, right now, that's illegal in Arizona. I don't think you can have gatherings that big, over 50 people anyway. And so we've set up these bundles of seeds for you to buy that have the bags, have the cards, and have bunches of seeds. And we've done them in pods of 10. So depending on how big of a thing you want to have, you buy accordingly. If you're going to have 100 people, you can buy 10 of them. And we actually picked out the 75 best varieties, most popular ones, because we couldn't do everything. And you can buy what you want of those 75, or we pre-packaged up in groups of 25, the ones we think you'll sell first. So if you don't have any time at all, you want to do a Seed Up, you want to do it for 10 people, and you want to have at least 25 varieties in it, so people will come, bang. All you have to do is go to the website and click buy, gone, sold. And we've even got a little book in there that tells you how to do it, how to set it up, things to think about. It's taken a lot. We've learned a lot over doing this over the last 6 years. And it's been great fun, but there's a lot to think about and a lot to do. So we make sure that we cover those bases for you so that you can get this going. And our hope is that the community will step up and start, seed exchanges, seed libraries, community gardens, different kinds of community groups, prepper groups, whatever. We're here to get you your seeds. That's our job.
Excellent. So our starting place for this is a pack of 25, which is $160. But that gets you 250 packets of seeds, and they're the jumbo packets of seeds. And so we're looking at 64 cents a packet. And if you want to do your own seed up, you could actually do your own seed up and double the price, and people would still get a screaming deal. So we've really thought through this well. Thank you for that, Bill.
Well, but thank you. For the first time in my life, I'm going to thank the centralized industrial seed system for setting such a high price point in their packets. We're all used to a certain amount for packets. Yeah. So we can even do this, and there's still enough room in it so that we can make enough to cover our time and energy for putting all this together. And if you're a community group and you need to do this as a fundraiser, you can make some out of it also. And everybody still gets twice as much seeds as they would normally. They get those hand-picked land-raised varieties that are the best ones we can find in bulk for this area, for your area, for any area right now, that will get you down the road to growing and saving your own seeds and adapting them to where you are. I mean, that's the beauty in these old land-raised varieties like Market More cucumbers. You can take them to Montana. You can take them to Florida. You can take them to Arizona. Now, is every seed going to give you the most cucumbers you could ever get? No. But as you grow them out and you look through and you find the individual vines that produce the most for you in your area because of the variability still in these varieties, you save those seeds and you start changing that variety to a desert-adapted Market More. And we know that that process can happen in 1 year. There have been tremendous breakthroughs in science and genetics in the last 20 years around epigenetics. We know now that a plant doesn't have to change its whole genetic DNA to do this adaptation. It can actually turn on and off genes by rolling it up using things called histines in 1 year. So in other words, if you plant your Market More cucumber in Phoenix and it gets really friggin' hot like it did this year, how many 110-degree days did you guys have
over
this
50.
Year?
Our previous record was 33.
All right, so 50, and the plants are going, we're going to die. So what does it do? It starts changing itself. It starts rolling up its DNA with these histines, the DNA of those things for the stoma that allow it to transpire more moisture, and because it doesn't have the moisture, and it starts shrinking its leaf size. It can change itself and do all sorts of survival things in 1 year. And what we know now is that if it goes to seed and you save those seeds have some of that stress resistance built in. In other words, Papa and Mama plant go, man, our kids don't have to go through this. We just went through it. It's probably going to be like this next year, so we're going to change our DNA so the next year you're ahead. And that's what we're talking about, people. We have the chance to exploit and to take advantage of this adaptability and rebuild farming systems in every region of the world. And we're going to need them. That's our belief as permaculturists. We see the hurricanes and the hot weather coming. We see the political, upheavals that may disrupt our supply lines to get our contract seed from China on time. I mean, those are things that worry us. And so that's why this whole event and this whole idea is so exciting, is that this is the fastest, quickest, easiest, cheapest way we have to get 4 million people up and running around this stuff. And you can do this wherever you are.
Awesome. And it's the seed up part that they can do wherever they are.
Yeah.
Well,
and you can, everybody who does a seed up wherever they are could even find their own seeds. I don't pretend to know the best. I can tell you the best of what's available in bulk for us to do seed ups on this level. Mm-hmm. But there are smaller amounts of seeds. And since I've been going, just in the last 20 years, there have been hundreds of new small regional seed companies starting. I mean, as a society, we're starting to learn this. We're going to get back to the way we were before World War II. Every area is going to have a source of seeds. And so we can all play a part in that. And this might be a way to kickstart that idea in your community. How do you get everybody excited? I mean, let me just tell you one thing I've learned in 40 years of doing this and teaching people how to saving seeds. You can get all about new websites and all about new databases that'll link everybody together so we can exchange seeds. You can get all over new organizations and starting new nonprofits. You can do all of those things. And they're at some point or another, they're all important in this chain of events. The most important thing is to get as many people as you can growing and saving their own seeds as quickly as possible. And if you do that, you'll get all those other things naturally. They'll just grow out of it. And if you want a worldwide network of people growing and saving and sharing seeds, great. But start at the bottom. This is basic permaculture. And grow it up from 3 people in your community or 10 people in your community garden. Do it there. Do it well first. And start sharing your own seeds to the people around you. And all that other stuff falls out. And the fastest way you can get 10 new people growing and saving their own seeds is to get our little seed up in a box package, which comes with a basic seed saving manual, which comes with the instructions on how to do it, which comes with landrace varieties that have been proven to adapt to a wide range of areas. And you can get them for cheaper than you can buy these seeds anyplace else. So that's what we're excited about, is we've kind of hacked ourselves into a system that really works.
Awesome. So let's jump over to questions. I think it was our June episode, Bill, that we talked about epigenetics, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so Hannah wants to know, she says, which episode was it? I believe it was the June episode. So if you go to urbanfarmpodcast.com and just look through the series, like I said, I'm pretty sure it was our June episode that the epigenetics came from. Let's see here. Leanne says, go ahead.
You can also go to the RockyMountainSeedAlliance.org website, and we have a recording of Seed Social we did with Bradley, Dr. Bradley Tonneson, he came on and answered questions about epigenetics. And that was in the June 18th Seed Social that we did. So that's another place to look. And we are going to have him on again. So.
Yeah, he's well worth it. Christina from Pueblo, Colorado, I suppose that's Pueblo, Colorado, maybe New Mexico. Why do people ferment their tomato seeds? Is this a good idea to do with other fruit or vegetable seeds?
Good question. I'll make the answer short. Usually when you get into our popular vegetable seeds, there are 2 methods to clean them and get them ready for packaging. The wet method and the dry method. Almost all of them are just done dry. And you can actually do tomatoes that way. You can just, if you're at a restaurant, you bite into a tomato, and it's the best one you've ever had. What I do is immediately look for seeds, put them in my napkin, roll them up. By the time I get home or remember them, they've way dried out, but they'll still work. The reason to do the wet method is that it more approximates what nature does. Think about it. Tomatoes are fruit. It's all wet. It's on a vine. It finally gets overripe. It falls to the ground and it starts rotting. And it turns out that there's a yeast and a mold that are pretty much built in to the process that start taking over. So what happens is the yeast eats the gelatinous cover off the seeds. That allows them to germinate. And the mold then that's in there, it's like white bread mold. Actually is like penicillin. And it treats those seeds with antibiotics. It actually helps those seeds to overcome almost all seed-borne diseases. Not all of them, but almost all of the ones in tomatoes. Never had a problem with a tomato seed-borne disease because I use the wet method. So that would be the number one reason to do the wet method. And it's pretty easy. I just did a batch of Punta Banda seeds today. When I ate all the tomatoes. I just sliced them at half of the equator and squeezed all the stuff into a jar. And then I let the jar sit around for 2 or 3 days, and then I filled it up with water. I water winnowed them, so to speak, and I just today poured them on a paper plate, and I'll let them dry out for a few days, and I've got my seeds. So it's a pretty easy thing to do.
Awesome. We got an email from Leanne today in my inbox. She says, I want to know how important it is to save seeds from multiple plants of the same crop.
Good question. We don't know why, but one of the fundamental unanswered questions in biology, and this seems to be in all of biology, is that why does nature favor heterosis, it's called. Heterosis is a fancy term for having different expressions of a gene at locations on the DNA. More diversity is all you have to call it. So if you save seeds from more than one plant, you're bringing in more diversity. Each plant is individual and it's been through a different set of stressors. How do you know, even in the same row, if you haven't planted one of those plants in fossilized dinosaur poop? You know, how do you know a dinosaur didn't go by there 100,000 years ago and poop? There's no sign of it left, but it's really a rich place. That plant will be different than ones in a different part of the row. And because of the roll of the dice of sexual reproduction, you know, and of natural mutations, it's going to be different. And so, you know, as a matter of course, we should always try to bring as much diversity as we can along the way. Now, there are some generally recognized parameters for that. And if you want the best place, am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Sorry about that. All right. A book called The Seed Garden that was published jointly, was published by Seed Savers Exchange. And if you want to get into that book, it's like if you have to be a serious seed saver, and it's got all of the garden and grains in it, and a lot of the folk wisdom that's been captured over decades. I mean, it's a big textbook, basically. But in it, they have two numbers. One is minimum amounts of plants you should probably pay attention to save seeds for your own garden or yard on a small scale, and that number you would need if you're doing it commercially. If you want to be really serious about doing it commercially, where uniformity and predictability are more important. And so, you know, generally, you know, for things like tomatoes and peppers, it's like 5 plants, 5 to 10 plants. And that's if you're a serious seed saver. Most, you know, gardeners get by just saving seeds off of one plant and won't see much of a difference over the years. And so I'll just leave it at that. It gets into a complicated thing called inbred depression. And you can get into that if you want to be a serious seed saver. But to get started, if you see seeds and you only get one seed from one tomato at one dinner party and you save it and it works, it works. And
right.
Whatever you were after is probably in it because it's a tomato and it's a self-pollinating plant. So I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome. We've got an email from Peggy from Craftsbury, Vermont. For tonight's session, I want to do as much seed saving this week as possible before the showers come next week. I'm in northern Vermont, and we've had frost already for 4 nights. Oh, my gosh, that's a dream, huh? Do I need to spread the seed out for any amount of time to make sure it's dry before I store it away? And what's the best way to store it over winter? Glass jars, paper packets, plastic bags, and then ideal temperature to store them at.
I'm going to twist your words around a little. It's not what you do, you know, or how long you do it to dry them. It's you want them dry, and you do whatever it takes to get that. Because the mantra for saving seeds is
cool, dark, and dry.
Cool, dark, dry. And that can be hard, especially if you're having showers every day and your humidity's up. Mm-hmm. Vermont's a tough place to save seeds, and because of that, so you may need some help. So moving air helps, having fans blow over your seeds, laying them out so that they don't touch each other, that a lot of air can get into them and through them and around them, and then threshing them and or storing them on a dry, low humidity day will be your next best thing to look for. I mean, if you have a barn or a room and you can turn on a heater and dry it out in there and warm it up, you know, even if it is raining outside, then that would be an alternative. But again, you want to keep them as cool as you can. The temperatures, you know, storing seeds in glass is the best, I think. Or, you know, they've got new really fancy impermeable plastics, acrylic plastics that can work also, but those are expensive and you're, you know, buying into a whole new plastic thing again. You know, glass jars are around. If you ask a restaurant, you can always find leftovers, even gallon jars or whatever. And so, as I said, only package those up on a dry day. Or if you've got those leftover silicone, you know, little packets that come in everything electronic these days, you could save those up and put some of them in the jar. Most important thing as far as temperature is below 80 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want to keep these in your house in Vermont near the wood stove all winter. You know, it's probably easy to keep them, you know, in the 50s and 60s, if not 70s, and those temps will be fine for them. I mean, if you want to get fancy, you can put them in freezers, not necessary, but there are those that say the colder you make them, the longer they'll last. But, you know, there's a danger to that because if you start storing your seeds for the long term, like 10, 20, 30 years where you need a freezer, and you're saving them every year, you're going to have way too many. It's the great Peterson freezer problem, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Share your seeds.
Better
go ahead.
It's probably better to use that time, energy, and money at this point into growing your network of seed savers around you so you can all do some of it and all share them. Mm-hmm. That way your community would be stronger.
Yeah. Well, that was really the backstory behind how we got the seed freezer here and then Great American Seed Up, was how do we create a resilient community of people that are all saving their own seeds?
Right.
And then
and I think we still, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, and then sharing them.
Yes. Now, I think we were getting mixed up with another emerging concept, and we're all just reinventing the stuff that many parts of the world had or have now, and we don't have. And that is a backup system, And so, having a regional seed vault where a community stores its seeds makes sense. And having that at really low temperatures can really make sense. So that way, if, the hurricanes start hitting Vermont, which is not, it's unlikely, but not out of the question these days, or if there's floods, or if there's fires, or whatever it is, and it comes through your whole valley and everybody at their homes loses all their seeds, where are they? Do you have a backup for that? You should think on that level. So having a regional backup center where communities all get together and do that together becomes another community building exercise, as well. But it also gives you a resiliency that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so that we're really in favor of that. Our dear friend Andrew Mushita in Zimbabwe has helped organize 3 regional seed vaults in Africa where people don't have to walk that far, communities don't, to put their seeds in them. And then each of those regional banks backs up each other's seeds. So it's like a double resilient system. And that's going to a lot of expense and work to do that. But guess what? It's worth it. Try to grow all that stuff back out again someday. And especially if you lose those varieties, they're priceless.
Yeah.
And so I asked Andrew, I said, so do you back that stuff up in Norway at Svalbard at the Doomsday Seed Vault? And I'll never forget his answer. He looked at me and he goes, Bill, you don't understand. You never back your seeds up or store them in a place that's too expensive for you to go check on them. It's that simple. Yeah. We can't all fly up there and look at them. So they've set up a system in Africa where they could literally walk to their regional banks to check on them if they need to. And I like that idea.
Wow, nice. So Janelle has a very interesting question, and it would be interesting to, and maybe you know the history behind this question, or maybe not. She says, I have heard that saving seeds from volunteer squash can lead to a toxic inedible squash. Is that true? And if so, can you speak a little to why?
Of course I can. It's happened to me. It happened several times in the 28 years of my seed company. Several of my customers called. One woman called me, and she was like horrified. She thought she was going to have to send her family to the hospital. And what she was really pissed about was that it ruined her dinner. And I said, what do you mean it ruined your dinner? She said we had pork chops and mashed potatoes and salad, and it was a picnic, and I had big plates. And then I had zucchinis. And I had sliced them up and steamed them, and I put the zucchinis on the plates, and the juice ran in, as it does, ran into the other things. She said that juice was so bitter that it ruined the whole dinner. Nobody could eat anything. Aww. And that was really the first time I'd heard about it. So I called up Holler & Company, which are the oldest family seed company, family-owned seed company still going that does cucumbers, does the cucumbers and the millets. In the United States, they're in Rocky Ford, Colorado. Every other company sold out. They're owned by one of the big giant pharmaceutical or chemical companies. These guys are still a family-owned operation. And I love these people. And I called them up and I said, I'll never forget. I explained what happened, and I could hear the guy take the phone away. This was back when we had phones, right? Landlines. And he took the phone away from his mouth, and he tried to put his hand over the receiver, and he yelled, we got the bitter gene. And I could hear people coming out of offices and all this stuff, and everybody was coming around because they wanted to hear the story. So here's the story. The cucumber family all have genes to do this. It is done for pest resistance. And the original varieties of wild, what became cucumbers and squashes, have this gene expression. And it's what they evolved with in the wild to keep them safe. So animals, insects wouldn't eat them. It's incredibly bitter. And so as we 10,000 years, largely indigenous women, probably all over the world, domesticated cucumbers, they selected for ones that weren't bitter. Probably had to taste them and only save the seeds from the ones that aren't. However, that recessive gene is still in the cucumber families, even in the most refined and selected lines in the United States today. In fact, they told me it's like 1 out of every 10,000 of them can show an expression of this. And so these guys were in this business, and they wanted to know everyone, wanted to document it. I had to give them lot numbers. They wanted to trace back to it. They were trying to even weed out them in this modern era. So you're right. It is possible. It may or may not have anything to do with whether it's a volunteer. You know, as we allow things to adapt and we save seeds where we are, we're allowing things to, revert back to the wild, so to speak, and use those wild tendencies to adapt and survive wherever they are. And so those are really great things, and we want those. And the bitter gene could express, and it probably has to get the story that Janelle is telling started. But it can happen through the most refined, sophisticated seed companies also. So just be aware of that. And so just be aware. It's a highly unlikely thing to happen, but it can happen.
Interesting. So I learned something new. This is why I love doing these. We've done over 600 podcasts. You and I have done dozens of these chats. And a big part of the reason I talk to people and interview people is because I get to learn new stuff. So thank you so much for that.
It's really fun. I took Bell to visit Holler and Company this is decades later. And they're still a family thing. And one of the cousins or something came out to meet me. It's in a little old house. They don't have big corporate headquarters. They're just in the buildings in this little town of Rocky Ford, Colorado, along the Arkansas River. And so I tell the story. They had made an appointment and allowed me to come. In fact, spent the whole day showing me their fields and whatever. They took really good care of us. It was really great. But I'll never forget when we were there and I started telling my story. The guy goes, "Oh yeah, you're the guy that called with the bitter gene that time." And everybody there 20 years later still remembered my call and this story.
Wow.
And this expression, So that's how this works. I just wanted to give some context around how important these stories are and how this is what we all get back when we grow and save our own seeds and start passing them around. We learn our histories. We learn deep knowledge about them. We learn how they adapt. These are the things that we've lost when we just go down and buy a packet of seeds, besides 90% of our money.
Right, exactly. Well, and it's not necessarily toxic. It's just bitter then.
Well, if you ate enough of it, it would probably make you sick. Toxics are really weird. You could probably design a poison. Here's the thing about poisons like that. You will never eat enough of it to really hurt yourself. You might get sick.
Yeah.
But it is so bitter. You would never, it's just, I've never heard of anyone expiring because of this.
There you go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. So for more information on the Great American Seed Up, and we're packing seeds for the Seed Up in a Box this Friday and Saturday. So if you want to get your order in, you can do that at greatamericanseedup.org. Bill, tell us a little bit about Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. Give me 1 minute on Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance so people know.
Well, the most important thing is that we're a new kind of seed conservation organization in that we don't want to find and save the seeds that we're losing. That's the conservation ethic that's propelled the World Seed Conservation Organization since the 70s. After being the director of one of those organizations, I realized that we don't have enough time, money, or energy to do that, to save enough. With climate change, shouldn't even be our goal. We don't want to save the way everything's been adapted to the past because we're living our way into a new future. So we use all of our energy to teach everybody how to grow and save their own seeds and take care of their own. And so education's our thing. And we have a class on right now, a 10-week online course called Seed School for Farmers and Gardeners too. And it meets 2 hours every Wednesday. We finished one version of it, but we've got 9 videos up We do it via Zoom, and everything's recorded. And now the class can go back and see those videos. So it's not too late to get involved. And then the course includes one-on-one with Don Tipping, who owns Siskiyou Seeds, and Casey O'Leary, who started Snake River Seed Alliance. So you have specific questions, and then I do office hours once a week on Tuesdays. And so you get one-on-one with it. We have hands-on. We've got all this stuff going. So if you really want to learn how to save seeds and you want the background about it, want to be a great seed citizen. In fact, if you want to start your own seed company, because 13 of our students have done that, this is our latest offering. We used to do these courses live, and we'll go back to doing them live when we can. But this one, it's working out pretty well, as I said, 10 weeks, 2 hours a week. So.
You mean in person?
Yeah, it's a live 2 hour a week. Yeah, Zoom.
Yeah.
And then they're recorded so people can go back and look and do whatever they want to do when they can.
Excellent. Well, there you go. And where do they find out about that?
RockyMountainSeeds.org.
There you go. For more information on the Great American Seed Up, go to greatamericanseedup.org. And once again, Bill, another month down. Thank you so much for the great information today.
Well, thank you. Great questions, everybody. Thank you. This is, as I said, I think this is one of the most important things we can do, and talking about it's fun. So good night, everybody.
Good night. Farm out, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.